Welcome back to the Hearthstone Collegiate National Championships. We have already gone full Finja today. It cannot possibly get more Finja than it already was during the first match of the day. UT Austin taking a win with 3 incredible decks and really just fantastic stuff so far. My name's Cora, and I'm joined, of course, by Nathan. That's Admirable Zamora. How's it going?
Very good after match number 1. I didn't think that we could come close to topping the Sacrificial Pact on Jiraxis from last week, but 4 Finja decks, it's pretty gosh darn close.
It's close.
Very much enjoyed it.
I don't know that I was quite as surprised as I was by the Sacrificial Pact. After we saw the first 2 Finja decks, we were kind of speculating, maybe the Druid has it. It would make sense. Sacrificial Pact just completely caught us off guard. But let's go ahead and take a look at our second match of the day. It is going to be University of Alberta taking on Cal State Polytechnic Pomona. And what are we making of these matchups?
Well, it's looking like it's mirrored right up until that 4th class. Alberta looks like they've brought Warlock to the table. Always liking the Warlock builds. They're very powerful right now. We saw them have fantastic success over both Europe and America's playoffs. And Priest, on the other hand, it tends to be a little bit weak. But again, with the self-ban format, you can bring a very risky deck to your lineup. And if you get the right matchups, keep it in there and go to battle with it. And in this case, facing off against Mage, against Shaman, against Warrior, unless there's some tech they've come up with, I imagine this deck could wait by the wayside.
Well, let's take a closer look at the University of Alberta. They did play on stream last week and actually picked up a win, so I'm sure they're looking to do the same today. It is Dayu, Zerebellion, and Void with Double Finance and Business Economics.
Yeah, a lot of finance, a lot of engineering, and computer
science.
That sort of stuff. These are just jammies. That's double jammies.
I mean, you want to be comfy. If you can be really comfortable, really in the zone when you're playing Hearthstone, I think, maybe they've already got the pajama advantage.
It's important to be focused.
All right, looking at their opponents, Cal State Polytechnic Pomona, CJ for Life, Legends Blade, and Graduation, Mathematics, Computer Science, and Computer Science. Yeah, it's pretty much what we're used to.
Yeah, I imagine he's looking forward to the third player here. Once that college is over.
Looking forward to graduation. I myself got that degree, but haven't had a chance to walk yet. So I can certainly feel what he's going through right now. They look ready to go. No jammies there, but certainly, hopefully, still comfortable enough to play some Hearthstone.
Yeah, I mean, they're hanging out with a motorcycle in the background. A real motorcycle. That wasn't a poster. Guaranteed.
Absolutely. So let's take a look at the bans.
Wow.
It is going to be self-banned Warrior for both teams. So now it is Mage, Shaman, Warlock versus Mage, Shaman, Priest.
I'm not really surprised by the Warrior ban, but it does seem a little bit odd. It's just such a powerful deck. Every single time I see it, it feels like it's got an edge. You certainly have some draws that are very poor and don't get the job done, and they're both facing off against Shaman and against Mage. So Arena Mage been a deck that we've been seeing actually have some good success versus Pirate Warrior, and against Shaman, a simple Stoneclaw Totem can actually beat you in some of the situations you very much get into, where you're trying to just completely race down your opponent and hope for the best. And here, with Alberta getting the Warlock versus Mage matchup right to start, it depends on the build here from Cal Poly Pomona, but if there's no Pyroblast in this build, oftentimes it can be in the favor of Alberta.
Well, it's looking like they've got a bit of a greedier Mage build. We already saw the Burgly Bully in hand, which usually means we're going to see Antonidas, and in a lot of cases can mean we've got Inkmaster Pyroblast. So we'll have to see what Cal Poly Pomona has decided to put in their list, but really great hands from both teams here.
Yeah, one of the big things for Alberta is that they need to get threats on board. They need to get them on board earlier rather than later. For Cal Poly Pomona, their removal is usually seeded in damage. Think like Frostbolt, Fireball, those sorts of effects, like small AoE damage. If Alberta gets a Twilight Drake or a Mountain Giant online, really only Polymorph handles that effectively. Maybe Flame Lance if that's teched into the build. But outside of that, those cards pack quite a punch and make it very difficult to get the time necessary to assemble all these pieces and have time to activate Brain Kazakus. And talking about the Mage iterations for a bit, we've seen some evolution take place in this deck. The first iteration with Bully and Archmage Antonidas get those extra coins from Burgly Bully, turn them into Fireballs to Archmage Antonidas. That meant Inkmaster Pyroblast almost every single time. But since this deck has continued to evolve and continue to adapt, the Pyroblast seems to be the flex slot that a lot of the mages are toying with. We saw very few of them over America's playoffs this weekend.
Yeah, it would certainly give the mage a better chance at killing the Reno Warlock post-Reno and, post-Diraxis in a lot of cases. If you can go Inkmaster Pyroblast and have a discounted Fireball or a Roaring Torch online, that just kills Diraxis right away.
Right.
So it certainly makes the mage, it gives them just that extra punch that they need in the late game. But the hand from the mage, certainly no slouch here as well. A lot of it's going to come down to, can they get that Brand Kazakus off? Can they find the time?
Yeah, the time is going to be the important one here because Alberta's hand is stacked right now. They have their own Kazakus, they have Twilight Drake, and they have Mountain Giant. This is a wonderful hand for Alberta. Cal Poly Pomona, they just have a bunch of fairly efficient minions in hand.
Against aggro, I think this would be a hand they were happy to have.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. This hand would be fantastic versus aggro. You'd have the Kazakus ready, Dirty Rat once their hand's empty, and Alberta is going to take this time to play Twilight Drake first. They play Twilight Drake first because they'll draw an extra card. Mountain Giant will go to 4 mana. They'll be able to life tap, pick up an extra, 3 mana left, and a 3 mana Giant.
Yep, nice ordering here by Alberta. And Cal Poly Pomona is generally going to have more fluid removal. They've got removal that can also double as damage. But here we can see, well, okay, I take it back. They do pick up a Polymorph, but that is only going to address one of the threats.
Yeah, the Twilight Drake is typically the one that you don't have to Polymorph, and especially not with Cal Poly Pomona's hand. So Water Elemental's going to contest here fine. They'd have Burgly Bully afterwards to compound that issue. They are free to take some damage here, but 9 health immediately being offered, that seems like a really good deal. It's really hard to pass that up, but if they don't pass that up, that Mountain Giant could really punish them.
It's going to be, do they have a read on Alberta's hand? Do they think that maybe there could be another threat to back up the Drake? They're going to hedge their bets and say no, and they are going to be disappointed when they find out that a tap Mountain Giant is online for this turn.
Yeah, so having the Ooze stick around is I think what ends up making their decision for them. If Alberta doesn't have Mountain Giant, their next threat is likely just to be cut down by this extra Acidic Swamp Ooze. Or it would delay their turn, they just wouldn't get any development online, Cal Poly Pomona takes the board. In this situation, they get punished by pretty much only Mountain Giant. And that's why I think that they ended up going with Polymorph. Suddenly, though, things look a little bit tough, and the Burgly Bully meant now simply to contest board. It's good play, but that's some potential fireballs lost.
Fireballs that could come in very handy later on in this matchup, giving you some value to grind out, kill your opponent's minions, or just to throw it face and clear off this game early.
Wow.
Siphon Soul pickup from Alberta is going to give them a lot of extra reach.
Well, I wouldn't have minded to see the Circle of Healing either. I think there was some real consideration to it. So the Mountain Giant runs over Burgly Bully. They heal it right back up, but suddenly Coin Flame Strike looking like a very dangerous position for you. So in that instance, they have Siphon Soul to just continue playing the long game and buy time, but I think there's some real merit to Circle of Healing there. Get that Giant back up to 8.
You've seen Polymorph already. Fireball Ping will never kill your Mountain Giant straight out.
Will not.
Several turns of 8 damage to Cal Poly Pomona's face could just close out this game before they even have a chance to use Kazakus or Reno or Antonidas.
Yeah, a really strong example there of situation really mattering. Circle of Healing, a much weaker card than Siphon Soul. But in this particular situation, with this context, there was some merit to it. It's hard to call one way or the other. Extra removal is always hard to turn down. But as we get our super secret Kazakus watch potion here, I'm curious what they ended up taking from this. So it's a double potion.
4 damage AoE on the first 5. Deciding whether or not they want to go with another 5 or a 10. They go with a 10. Not going to be online for a few turns, but if they can pick up some really nice value off of it, they could maybe turn this game around. I don't think they're finding what they need.
Yeah, demons do have some merit, but it's going to require them to have board control at that point. So 6 damage all minions, add 3 demons to hand, and polymorph a random enemy minion, resummon 2 friendlies that die this game. So the resummons, fairly weak at the moment. They have Burgly Bully. Looks like they're going to have Bran afterwards, and then it's Blood Mage and Acidic Swamp Ooze in there. So some pretty weak resurrects that are on the horizon here for Cal Poly Pomona.
Alberta likely looking to trade into the Kazakus here, protect the Mountain Giant at all costs.
Yeah, and you're not seeing things up top in Alberta's hand. That's a second Siphon Soul. One of those provided by that Cabal Courier. That's a lot of gas in hand.
Alexstrasza picked up by Cal Poly. It's a really valuable card in the late game, can be used both defensively and offensively, but they need to get through this board first before they can even consider how they're going to close out the game.
Are they just going to rip this potion?
I mean, do they have another choice? If they Volcanic Potion, they still can't kill the Giant. Puts them down to 12 next turn.
Well, this is hard, and this is one of the reasons why that Polymorph is really important to extend. You know, if that was a Twilight Drake, they'd probably be at a similar life, but it would have been handled by now. They had Polymorph for that Giant, this wouldn't be an issue. They're going to go with Dirty Rat, hope it's a strong pull for them, and it's not. It's the opposite of that, and suddenly they are in heaps of trouble. That's a 6/4 Abyssal Enforcer.
Doesn't get the battle cry, doesn't matter. Still a much bigger body than they would have liked to come online there.
It's an interesting spot for Alberta. I mean, there is definitely some merit to Blast Crystal Potion forcing through damage here. They know there's no board clear in Cal Poly Pomona's hand. They 100% would have played board clear. And Alexstrasza, wow, look at this. They have so many good options here. They could Blast Crystal, trade over. They could Siphon Soul, trade over.
They could Shadow Flame.
I'm liking the Shadow Flame, honestly. That's a fairly weak card in this matchup.
So your Mountain Giant's already 8-1. Your opponent's going to ping it on the following turn.
Yeah, the question is Blast Crystal or Shadow Flame a stronger card? Oh, they want to connect for 8. This is really smart, too. I mean, this does force 2 mana from Cal Poly Pomona this turn. And Reno Jackson gets picked up. Not too shabby. And now suddenly there's an 8/8 in the pool for this Resurrect. This game's getting weird.
It's going to come down to this pull. Poly Pomona celebrating. Did they? They got the right Polymorph, and they got the Alexstrasza off of the Resurrect.
Now, still a lot of gas in Alberta's hand. So the Alexstrasza is likely to force removal here, but not necessarily do much else. They do have a slight board lead. Reno Jackson on the other side, though.
Alberta playing the Siphon Soul that they did not get from the Cabal Courier. Really nice use of concealing information there still. Cabal Courier picked up for Pomona as well.
Well, where does this Manic Soulcaster fit in is what I'm wondering. Cal Poly Pomona doesn't really have a defined game plan right now. They're still in a resource battle. And if that's the case, it's hard for them to identify how they actually win the game from this spot. I mean, they're using the Kazakus Potion simply to answer what Alberta's been doing. When that's happening, it means Alberta, if they're not under pressure themselves, they just get to wait, keep life tapping, build up a strong hand, find the way to win afterwards. Right now, their method to winning is basically just card advantage.
Cal Poly Pomona would have liked to see that Manic Soulcaster on the Kazakus, would have given them the most value long game. There's also the option to play it on the Reno, but I don't think 2 large heals will necessarily win you this game. I think I'd like to see it on the Antonidas.
Yeah, I think so as well. So that might require them to actually wait quite a bit of time. You know, in the position they're in right now, they're not really under threat of lethal. They haven't had any reason to believe Alberta's got some significant burst damage from hand other than the aggressive Mountain Giant push, but that was stifled. So Shadow Word Death, a great pickup, able to answer some of the larger threats later on, have the potion to restabilize a bit.
Alberta is running out of threats, though.
It's true. They do have the Brand Kazakus coming up soon, though. I imagine Emperor Thorison is the play this turn.
Do you like playing Emperor before you get your Kazakus potions or after?
I typically like playing it first because Brain Kazakus takes up just a lot of room in your hand, and it's a lot of mana to get that online. When you reduce that by 2, suddenly your potential opens up, and being able to drop a taunt minion and play Brain Kazakus usually puts your opponent in a fairly awkward position. Bran is a very dangerous minion to leave in play, but they've already seen Twilight Drake. Now they've seen Cabal Courier. Not a lot to match with the brand, so I wouldn't say quite as scary. And I'm really not sure about this Doomsayer. I don't really... I guess in the face of like a deal 6 damage and res 3 minions potion, this is actually fairly strong. They get to take the board back. It does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, at first glance, it's a Doomsayer that doesn't seem very obvious. Cal Poly Pomona doesn't want to give up their board, but also Alberta doesn't want to give up the Emperor Thorison.
Yeah, and something to think about here, though, is they have Brain Kazakus in hand. So with Doomsayer in the pool, it makes your Resurrects a little bit weaker. I mean, it can be a pure liability at that point.
That's actually something that we saw be very relevant during HCT this weekend. A Kazakus potion with 3 res that could have won the game ended up pulling Doomsayer, buffed it +6 health, and ended up blowing up the board on the following turn. So who knows, may come into play here as well.
This too, having to play Reno Jackson straight into Doomsayer. So at this point, Cal Poly Pomona is fearing the potential of Leroy Jenkins, Faceless Manipulator, alongside Power Overwhelming. That combination would absolutely kill them in this spot. They play Reno Jackson simply to get the heal, and Alberta instead goes, you know what? Picking up a bunch of value. Cal Poly Pomona just got severely punished by this sequence from Alberta. Well played.
We haven't seen any instance of the Leroy combo in this Reno Warlock, but it's something that they certainly need to be aware of the potential that Alberta has it. So they successfully played around it, gives Alberta the initiative, however, and now they are going to have 2 Kazakus potions online. Going with a 5-mana potion first. The next one will likely be a 10-mana potion. They want to get as much value as they possibly can.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to take a 5 and then a 10 here because the discount on Bran and Kazakus means they have 5 mana left. So if they pick up a strong 5-mana potion that can bounce board pressure and force an answer from Cal Poly Pomona, then they just get to follow up with the 10. Oftentimes as this board gets answered, Cal Poly Pomona won't redevelop.
That's a good point. If they were to use their 5-mana potion, get, a Resurrect and some health, for instance, or a Demon and some health, it might actually draw out the 10-mana potion from Cal Poly Pomona to clear off the board.
Yep, and they're actually going to not take the Refreshment Vendor value alongside this. It would have cost them a life tap. They've seen Alex Strauza. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense not to here. There's no threat of dying at this point.
Yep, now we see Jiraxis picked up, which is just going to extend Alberta's long game even further.
This is looking rough.
Cal Poly Pomona is just running out of resources here. They're going to need to make some magic happen with the Kazakus Potion and the Manic Soulcaster, I think.
It's difficult to do in this spot as well. I mean, they're out of card draw.
I believe it's a defensive
10-mana potion card draw?
I think it's deal 6 damage.
Add 3 random demons.
Yeah, 3
it's kind
random
of like
demons.
card draw. It's probably got to play that this turn, honestly. It's not a very strong board to play it into. What else do they do with this hand if they don't do that?
Also, it's rare that you actually have room in your hand to be able to get the 3 demons and not overdraw. So this would be a spot where they can go ahead and play it, clear the board, and then, still get their draw on the following turn. Wow.
Well, it's kind of interesting because the spell damage isn't irrelevant. That could definitely put together some numbers that's unexpected for Alberta. Say they get a big Emperor discount and they have Frostbolt Fireball. Now, well, suddenly that Fireball deals 8 and that Frostbolt deals 5. Maybe that's something they're ill-prepared for.
Certainly not
good fetches.
Useless pickups. Not great. I think this past weekend for HCT we saw Cruelly Unshackled, Doomguard, and Fearsome Doomguard. That would have been a little bit stronger here for Cal Poly Pomona, but you know what?
In that
3
same
demons
game,
is better than no demons.
In that same game, Trey had multiple copies of a card in his deck thanks to a Manic Soulcaster.
He had 2 Kazakus in deck, played the Cruel, and did not get the activation.
Yeah, this looks to be strong enough for Alberta. Sylvanas on an empty board, not a fantastic play, but oftentimes it gets the job done. They just need to get any pressure rolling and really go from there. And Emperor Thorson gets found, but that's a tough minion to play directly into Sylvanas. If there's a Power Overwhelming or a removal spell on Alberta's side, they get to steal that Emperor. That is scary. This is probably a Fireball this turn. Wow.
Second Emperor activation would be huge for Alberta if they're able to take the Emperor off of Cal Poly Pomona's board. I'm happy that they're really thinking it out. It's between the Fireball and the Emperor. Do you think this is a good enough hand to Emperor?
It's definitely a good enough hand to Emperor, but the problem is just the risk of it here. I don't think that risking it into Sylvanas is necessarily wise. They're going to go for it. They feel like they're way too far behind to make this happen.
They're hoping for the trade from the Sylvanas.
I think something that they're looking to is exactly that trade. I think they're fearing combo right now, but when your opponent plays Sylvanas, that oftentimes means they don't have combo in the deck. It's a very tough minion to fit in alongside Mountain Giant. When both of those cards show up, there's a pretty strong chance your opponent just does not have the Leroy Jenkins Faceless Manipulator package in their deck in order to take advantage of it. So that 5 damage, it may be actually fairly inconsequential. And again, there's always the risk involved.
Alberta may be considering hit face with Sylvanas, siphon their own Sylvanas. That's what they're going to do.
Absolutely. Turn that Sylvanas into an Emperor Thaurissan and take your opponent's Emperor Thaurissan away. That seems like a pretty good deal to me.
And it was the second Siphon Soul. That was the one from the Cabal Courier. So
yeah, that's a good point
not
to
a
note,
bad
too.
deal.
I actually forgot about that. They had seen Siphon Soul, the natural one. They had already seen Blast Crystal Potion. How could they have killed their own Sylvanas? That's a really good point, actually. Maybe the Kazakus Potion, like, deal 8 damage directly, or the 5-cost potion, deal 5 damage. That's something to think about, too. I personally would have liked to see Fireball last turn.
Cal Poly Pomona debating about whether or not this is the big Antonidas turn.
It definitely is at this point. I mean, they've seen everything from Cal Poly Pomona. That Emperor is the last remaining natural threat, and the potions, of course. But here they get 2 extra Fireballs.
Well, you could Antonidas Death and then play the Manic Soulcaster if you think that you can get more value out of a second Antonidas than you can the first.
That's a good point, too. You know, getting the initial force with the Archmage Antonidas, I mean, this is going to force Alberta to handle this in some way. They're going to elect to not go with the Manic Soulcaster.
It's making the Manic Soulcaster weaker and weaker, but
yeah,
Cal Poly Pomona has 2 Street Tricksters in hand, discounted, and now 2 Fireballs. It's representing a lot of damage.
It is. I mean, that's 16 damage burst from that alone. So I'm guessing their plan is just to hope that they can chip Alberta down to about 16, have them think, we're safe. 16's outside of Fireball, Frostbolt range.
Still a 2-turn lethal, however. They only have the mana for 1 Street Trickster and the 2 Fireballs in the same turn. So to unlock 16, they would need to either have 1 played on the turn before. Wow. Amazing indeed, Admirable.
The Tespa Series has just delivered. The Hearthstone Collegiate National Championship has had some of the most incredible moments in games that I have ever seen. This is just wacky.
I mean, you gotta love HCT. It's the height of competition, but this is just...
You got Reliquary Seeker.
3 guys in their robes with 4 Emperor Tharsans this game.
This is insane.
Where else are you going to see 3 guys in robes playing Emperors?
If Cal Poly Pomona had drawn Frost Nova here, they'd actually be in pretty good shape.
Oh my god. They could just Frost Nova and go face, and Alberta wouldn't be able to play the Reno.
Yeah, you would just Frost Nova and play one of your Street Tricksters. And then next turn you play the other Street Trickster. It's +3 spell power. That's 18 damage from Fireballs. Honestly, I think you draw for Frost Nova.
I mean, Alberta does have the Demon Wrath or the 0-mana Shadow Flame, so they would be able to make room for the Reno. I don't think it's going to work out for Cal Poly,
they're
but...
going to play defensively here.
Yeah.
It totally makes sense, too. I mean, they need to really take care of the board shape.
Now cleared off 4 Emperors this game, excuse me. One of them which was theirs originally.
Interesting, they don't Shadow or Death the Reliquary Seeker.
They've already played Reno.
That's a lot of damage to take to kill a 1/1 instead of a 5/5.
I don't know. They have Alexstrasza in deck still, but their healing capability is...
They got pulled from the Dirty
It did
Rat.
get pulled from the Dirty Rat.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Okay, so the only healing they have is Refreshment Vendor.
Maybe Kazakus Armor. Well, no, they've already used Kazakus.
Yeah, and
what
Rand.
is those Inkmaster going to hit?
It's just not going to, unless there's a Pyroblast in the deck. But now Antonidas is gone. You still haven't used Manic Soulcaster.
Yeah, I don't know. Cal Poly Pomona, they've been fighting for board position the entire time. It's pretty unfortunate to run into a double Emperor Thaurissan Resurrect off of a potion, but man, that's a strong one. Deal 8 and summon an 8/8. I think that's got him for Alberta.
Cal Poly Pomona, no way to heal up from here for more than 4 with the Refreshment Vendor. It needs to be Frost Nova just to buy them another turn. And even then, you got Hellfire in hand, plus Jiraxis, which you can actually play on the same turn.
Oh yeah, it's a 6-cost Jiraxis.
That would be lethal. Yeah, I mean, there's Blizzard.
Street Trickster Blizzard looks okay. They just
They're
need to
still
heal,
dead.
though. Yeah, they need to heal.
They're still dead through heal. Oh wait, no, Hellfire Jiraxis is 7. You're right.
6.
Yep, that's 6. Do you know that 6 doesn't equal 7, Admirable?
I know it does. I know that 5 doesn't equal 6. I've experienced
Which
that.
also doesn't equal 7. Yeah.
Experienced that on the main stage before. Oh, that's their plan. Fatigue. Oh, that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Yep. Well, this is going to do it.
This is what 4 Emperor activations does. Let your opponent just kind of do whatever they want.
Things get crazy when you have that many discounts in hand. I start forgetting how to count basic numbers. And Alberta just completely dominating this first game of the series, going up 1-0.
Yeah, a long, grindy game, but that's the nature of the Reno matchups. Is it's about fighting for that position, fighting for the moment where your swing turn is stronger than your opponent's. That's what these decks boil down to, is powerful combinations of cards that yield tremendous value. And in this one, Emperor Thorson, I think, kind of just ran away with it. Those activations just unlocked so many strong turns for them, and it forced defensive play, and that's the important part, I think.
I think you could even just go back to turn 4. Twilight Drake on 4, Mountain Giant on 5. Alberta really had this game locked up from the mulligan, kind of. It was very, very difficult for Cal Poly Pomona to get any sort of edge. And Alberta just taking game number 1, still needs to find a win with the Mage and the Shaman against the Mage, Shaman, and Priest. How does the Priest do here? I mean, I'm interested.
I would anticipate doing fairly well against Mage. It's often going to be a Reno Mage. If it's Tempo Mage, they could struggle a little bit unless they get a strong curve, but against Reno Mage, Priest buys so much value with Draconid Operatives, with the extra Azure Drakes, with Netherspite Historians, and all the damage is removal for Alberta. So any super health efficient minion is going to just fight well against the removal spells that Alberta could potentially have in that Mage deck. It's where stuff like Cabal Talon Priest is a really big deal. Power Word Shield can help protect you from AoE spots. There's a lot of stuff going on where Priest just matches up really well against Reno Mage.
Yeah, the sheer tempo of the Priest, able to build up those big health creatures in the early game, like you said, is very hard for the Mage to deal with efficiently. Very similar to what we saw, actually, just with the Reno Warlock. A 4-9 and an 8-8 were the downfall of the Mage in the early game, and then from there, they were just never able to come back. So,
yeah. I honestly, I think the probably most important thing to look at in that game, too, was how they handled the Twilight Drake.
Yes.
They could have taken a little bit more damage, and if Cal Poly had saved the Poly, maybe they're in a little bit of a better spot. If they polymorph that Giant, I think that game is totally different. They're under way less pressure. They do sacrifice like the Water Elemental to take care of Twilight Drake, but what did that Water Elemental really do that game? It's tough to say.
Hit face for 3 and then got killed by a Doomsayer that, fortunately for Alberta, did not get resurrected. But that game is gone, and we're getting into game number 2. It is going to be the Shaman for Alberta and the Reno Mage, once again, for Cal Poly Pomona.
Yeah, this matchup tends to be favored for the Reno Mage. They just have so many tools that line up very well against what Alberta's trying to do. They're trying to set up a board state and start getting value from cards like Flame Tongue, just getting repetitive damage out of a Tunnel Trawl, getting buffed up from your Overload spells. A lot of cool things work when the Shaman goes unchecked, but when they're in the face of disruption, sometimes their tools can tend to fall apart. And something really noteworthy here is that Cal Poly Pomona pitched away a Polymorph. And that Jinyu Water Speaker also means this is likely a mid-range Shaman deck. So ignore the super aggressive potential. This is going to scale with Jades very often.
Yeah, actually makes the Polymorph throw reasonable from Cal Poly Pomona. No Flame Wreath Faceless going to be coming down on 4 here, which means they just have more time to be able to close out this game. Does, however, like you said, give Alberta more time to scale those Jades, which eventually the Mage will run out of removal for.
This is the one visual bug of the game I really enjoy.
Babbling Book watching over this board.
Just the way the hero just shifts off to the side to kill a flank.
That Babbling Book is
Frostbolt
just a giver.
Great pickup for Cal Poly Pomona as well. That little Babbling Book delivered. And they're going to take a little bit of a risk here. So just hero power the patches. And that is a strange play. I mean, they're eyeing Volcanic Potion, and Alberta going to not read into this. They play straight into it. This is a situation where I think Alberta had a chance to read into what this play meant. Hero power onto the Small-Time Buccaneer would have signaled there was no AoE in hand. They needed to take care of it right away. When they kill that Patches instead, they're trying to bait Alberta into committing more to the board than they should here.
Yep, that's a fantastic point. And Alberta going to be punished just a little bit here. Volcanic Potion taking away both of the Buccaneers, and the Reno Jackson picked up for Cal Poly Pomona. This is just going to completely shut down any of Alberta's aggressive early game. but they are a mid-range deck overall, so maybe not as influential as it would have been against an aggro shaman.
Yeah, that being said, card draw is going to be necessary for Alberta this game. They have Blood Mage in hand, but they need to find a Manatide Totem and have it be protected. Cal Poly Pomona is going to start developing their board position. They're very safe at this point, and if that board position starts to snowball and they're picking up a lot of value from their minions, anytime they pick up card draw, it's going to be lights out for Alberta.
What do you think about the aggressive use of the Spirit Claws on that previous turn by Alberta?
It makes some sense. I mean, you don't want to just run straight into like Acidic Swamp Ooze and just lose all that value. Now you have other weapons in the deck you need to unlock. It's reasonable. I mean, they probably anticipate this anyway, but
yeah, lines up really
lose
well
a charge
here.
of claws here. That could be important. It's hard to say. I didn't really think about it that much, honestly.
Cabal Courier's a nice pickup. There's Ronin.
Potion of Madness is pretty strong in this matchup, too. You know, one of the ways that they can really swing the board apart is if Alberta, say, plays Blood Mage, and they're able to take the Blood Mage, hit something, draw a card themselves. You know, stealing Flame Tongue and having the positioning pan out for you. That's a very powerful card against Shaman. But it's hard to deny the pure value that Ronin offers as the late game comes in.
Especially with Archmage Antonitis. That's a lot of fireball potential here, but Cal Poly Pomona, they don't necessarily know that Alberta is a mid-range shaman yet. It could just be an aggressive shaman that had a bit of, you know, some weak mid-range draws. Going to be interesting to see whether or not they can make it to whether they think they can make it to the long game for the Ronin, or want to just go ahead and pick the Potion of Madness here. And honestly, Usher of Souls is a 5-mana 5/6. It slots into their curve pretty well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of little tells going on here for Cal Poly Pomona, though. I mean, they didn't see a big damage push. They saw hero power very early on. They didn't see Jade Lightning. You know, your opponent could very easily be holding on to Jinyu, onto Hex, onto Eye of Blackpaw in those spots. I mean, maybe they just have a double Azure Drake hand, but I think they're starting to develop a read, and honestly, their play seems fairly consistent with that thus far.
Well, Cal Poly Pomona just pulling further ahead. Easy clear on the Azure Drake, and Alberta's hand is incredibly reactive and very slow.
Yeah. That's probably what influenced Cal Poly Pomona in this spot, was just knowing that Ronin is unlikely to get value if your opponent has Hex.
Aya Blackpaw coming down. She's very weak at this point. Still a great draw, of course, for Alberta. It makes their Jade Chieftain even stronger on the following turn. And Pomona actually doesn't have the easiest way of clearing her off, but with the Potion of Madness.
That's what I'm looking at, too. I think Dirty Rat's actually like a fairly strong play here. If your opponent's holding on to minions where their effect is either situational or battle cry, you can start to disrupt that. Oh, they get the Blood Mage. That's so big for Cal Poly Pomona, and that's that interaction.
This is going to work out so well for them here. Taking the draw away from Alberta, giving it to themselves, and putting a really nice clear onto the Eye of Blackpaw.
That is sick. And they have a 2/6 taunt in play.
Yeah, Dirty Rat's just good sometimes. When your
Dirty
opponent's not playing 4-mana 7/7s.
That's just right. Every time I've like Dirty Rat as Shaman, and I think it's mid-range, like, all of a sudden Flame Wreath pops out. I'm like, what is that doing in your hand? Why didn't you just play this? I don't understand. It's turn 8.
So I had to play Pirates early.
And there's a tech choice from Alberta. The Devolve. It certainly can pull away very powerful effects from your opponent, but they have 2 hexes in hand. And that card doesn't clear off anything by itself. It requires you to typically use another resource with it to get a full clear. Additionally, that Cal Poly Pomona isn't looking to build a huge board. They're looking to go piece by piece, pace their threats, and handle what's thrown at them. Devolve is a fairly dead draw.
I love the Devolve in this deck. I don't love it in this matchup. If you're up against a board full of small pirates, you can devolve them all into Murloc Tiny Fins, and then, you know, go into Maelstrom Portal and just clear the board entirely. It can be really, really flexible in a lot of cases. You can devolve a Tyrion, you can devolve a Sylvanas, but against the Reno Mage, there are just not going to be good options here that the Hex couldn't already remove cleaner.
Right. Sometimes you just devolve and run straight into Murloc War Leader as well.
That's true. You devolve the rat, it becomes a 1-drop.
Oh, look at this. So, just a Doomsayer, and now suddenly Devolve's opened up. Looking really good now.
2 1s and a 4. Barnes making an appearance.
I know, something about that animation just is like funny to me too. It's like not really spectacular.
It seems like it's gonna be more exciting, you know? It needs sounds. Like the visual's pretty good.
I want them all to say their
need
entry
music.
lines. That's what I
Okay.
want, yeah.
Okay.
I think that would have sold me on it.
We could just hear Barnes. So nice of you to join me
Yeah.
when he gets put on the board. Okay, yeah. I could see it.
Tale of triumphant champions.
Who will triumph? Who will be the champion?
Yeah, some nice trades here too. So Devolve actually does get some strong value, but again, if this pressure gets handled, the rest of Alberta's hand is weak. Thankfully for them, pressure's not getting handled. Cal Poly Pomona has a lot of utility in hand. Alex Straza, start the burst potential. Ink Master Solia, unlock bigger turns with giant spells. Reno Jackson, heal yourself to full when you're starting to dwindle. Manic Soulcaster, get that long-term value. None of these are working together. They've drawn every single card that operates on its own purpose.
It's a lot of separate game plans in Cal Poly Pomona's hand, and no AoE, so this board is not getting cleared easily. The thing is, Alex Straza comes down, sets your opponent to 15. The only burn you have in hand is Frostbolt. And by playing the Alex Straza, you're electing to not clear off even the 3/3 Golem from your opponent.
Yeah, I think their objective here is simply just buy time. So Hex pulls 3 mana. Also start getting information on the Hex. Alberta starts to trade into the board. Prevents a lot of damage, and it does set Alberta into a fairly uncomfortable position. You'll know right away if they have healing or not.
Cal Poly Pomona still needing to find some way to remove this board. It's not the most powerful board, to be perfectly honest, but the healing totem is just incredibly annoying here.
Well, I'm also really interested why Alberta didn't play Flame Tongue or the Jade Lightning here. I think it's pretty obvious that Cal Poly Pomona doesn't have AoE in hand. I mean, they had a great setup for Flame Strike on the previous turn. Blizzard, I think, would have been very likely to be used. What are they afraid of with those cards? I feel like this is a spot to push damage and put Cal Poly Pomona to the test. They're going to go one more turn and see what it's like, but certainly next turn, one of those two cards is getting used.
I can see not wanting to put down the Jade Lightning, but if your Flame Tongue Totem ever gets 4 damage, that's pretty much a win for Flame Tongue Totem.
Yeah.
You haven't seen Reno from your opponent yet, but you're not really in a position to hold back. You don't have
Just got Alex,
the cards in hand. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you gotta start.
You gotta
Get
go
going.
at some
That's
point.
scary.
Oh, can't play that this turn. You have too many minions on the board.
You know, Alberta would be 18 this turn, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. They would have had to draw to pop the ice block if they'd actually played, or they would have popped the ice block this turn rather with the Jade
The
Lightning.
Jade Lightning.
If they would have done that, they would forego their Golem to do that. But again, I don't think there's any reason for them to believe there's AoE in Cal Poly Pomona's hand. It's been 2 turns.
You pop the block, you put your opponent on having Reno, and at that point they can't have Reno and board clear on the same turn.
That's right. It would have to be Frost Nova. So that missing that 4 damage last turn actually comes with quite a cost now. Cal Poly Pomona picks up an AoE to wipe this board. Great position. Frost Nova to stall a little bit. How about Brand
Kazakus can do
Kazakus?
it.
And honestly, not popping that ice block is likely to punish them here. Suddenly, Cal Poly Pomona is opened up to be able to play Reno Jackson, recover the board state, and then utilize these massive potion effects.
Transform all minions into sheep, gain 10 armor, both really nice options here from the first 10 mana Kazakus potion. And now they're going for a 1. They want to play it on this turn, see if they can clear off some of this board and maybe keep their block up for one more turn.
Yeah, I think that's the goal here, is to try to have that happen. I don't really know what the success rate is on that, but it looks like, yep, transform all, deal 8 damage, and then deal 3 damage, gain 4 armor. So they're not going to sling it right away.
Sling it on the
Interesting.
same turn as Reno, maybe.
Perhaps. You know, they could have cleared off the Flame Tongue.
Still would have been
Frozen the,
5, 8, 11 on board. That would have been enough to pop the block through the 4 armor and the removal.
What if they use Frostbolt alongside it?
Then it
1, 2,
You know,
3, 4,
maybe
5,
wouldn't
6,
have
7,
been
8, 9, 10
if
damage.
you don't
They
know
would
what's
have
in Alberta's hand.
Yeah, I mean, they would have been an 11 life facing 10 damage on the board. This is a weird game.
The only burst from hand your opponent has is Jade Lightnings. No lightning bolts, no lava bursts in this build.
Yep. Speaking of Jade Lightning,
There's 2 of them. Cal Poly Pomona has the Polymorph All potion, but they need to Reno this turn. There's no way they are going to be able to
Yeah.
live if they do not.
yeah, you're absolutely right. They took the 1-cost potion for this exact situation, and honestly, they might have been looking at Whoa, what is
Whoa.
this? So if that was 2 damage to all.
Embrace the power of the cabal.
Oh, I don't... Wait, how much damage? That's 11? With the Frostbolt.
Oh my gosh, I
That's
just missed the
lethal.
damage. Oh, I didn't even see that.
Yeah, 8
oh, that's
damage from the
clever.
potion, 3 from the 1, and then another 3 from the Frostbolt. Okay, that's
Hey,
just going to do it.
That's why they're mathematicians. They can count.
I just didn't even
see
put
that.
together all the mana. That's the thing. 10 mana for 1 potion, 1 for the other, and 2 for Frostbolt. But with Ink Master, that's exactly 10 mana, and that's going to be 14 damage, 1 over than Cal Poly Pomona needed.
Woo.
Really clever job for them figuring that one out. And
So-
I don't know if maybe they knew it when they took the potions, but it certainly worked out.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what they were going for when that happened. You know, I just a couple turns earlier mentioned the Ink Master coupling with Pyroblast speed damage. Well, 8 damage is pretty close. And if you get the Alex Raza off, it starts to set that up. And I mentioned it, just totally rolled out of my mind. Good on them, though, to stay focused. That's an important factor when you're in Hearthstone games. One moment where you slip up can be the difference between winning and losing. One wrong turn. And that ice block not being popped that one turn earlier, that would have forced some action. They wouldn't have gotten that Brain Kazakus off. We would have had a totally
Reno.
different ballgame.
Absolutely. That was really just, the onus on Alberta having not played the Flame Tongue Totem that one turn, could have rolled into the Jade Lightning the following turn, potentially popped the block one turn earlier, and then Cal Poly Pomona would not have had the ability to lethal them so soon. But regardless, Cal Poly Pomona finding a lethal that we did not until it was already happening. A lot of options there for them that turn, and they knew exactly what they needed to do, and they did it. So this series is all evened up 1-1. Now it is the Mage and the Shaman versus the Shaman and the Priest.
Still looking at that Priest deck. Now, it is a mid-range Shaman. I've been seeing Priest operate so much better against Jade Shaman than it does against Aggro Shaman. I think that the Shadow Word Deaths line up a little bit more nicely in terms of timing. They still get a ton of value. Hex is now a card you can actually get from your opponent to handle some of these situations. And it's not under pressure early. When Priest isn't under pressure early on, a lot of times that gives them those turns to assemble those big power turns where they get those extra health from Cabal Talon Priest. They're making efficient trades. Dragonid Operatives start to get unlocked. I think that Jade Shaman tends to operate a little bit worse than Aggro Shaman does, but Devolve is an important card in this matchup. That's one card that can change the scope of things when it comes to that matchup. But it's going to be mid-range Jade versus mid-range Jade in game number 3.
This is really quite unusual. I didn't expect to see a mid-range Jade mirror. Certainly Aggro Shaman is the more popular of the two builds in this meta, but mid-range Jade has some decent matchups all around. It's not a terrible choice.
Oh.
That's
Gosh.
pretty ugly. I know you like him.
I'm so sorry, Alberta. The most powerful legendary, or what many consider the most powerful legendary in Standard. Not so powerful when you actually draw it.
Incredibly counterintuitive, but hey, there's patches for you. And Cal Poly Pomona gets the patches on the board. Could be the power of the golden patches. Or maybe Alberta's patches was just too eager this game.
I just like the contrast of golden patches, but regular spirit.
They have priorities, Admirable. They know that if their patches is golden, he's going to be on their side.
This is a big turn for Cal Poly Pomona. That's a heap of damage coming in. Now, this is straight into Lightning Storm from Alberta, so this is about what they were hoping for here. But if that Flame Tongue sticks around, it could spell danger. So,
Flame Tongue Danger Totem. It's middle name.
Danger's in quotes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just a little known fact.
It's a fun known fact.
Fun known fact.
Even Blood Mage picked up alongside the Maelstrom portal. Alberta, even with this patches draw, they look like they may just pull pretty far ahead. I mean, this is a lot of card advantage they're getting.
Cal Poly Pomona got the early damage, but if Alberta can, win out in the mid game, then the early damage may not matter. You've got 2 Jinyu Water Speakers. You can heal that off with 1 4-mana minion.
They're eyeing using the patches alongside the Maelstrom portal as well, which I don't have a problem with. I mean, this will keep them from being overloaded and keep Jade Lightning open on the following turn, as well as keep Lightning Storm in their hand. Lightning Storm performs very well if you have Blood Mage and can clear off a board full of Feral Spirits, Flame Tongue Totem, in the business. But they're going to go with Lightning Storm, and that is a low roll.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for them. Flame Tongue Totem and the business. The Healing Totem here really really unfortunate. Alberta cannot clear off that Flame Tongue now.
Now, there was a 50% chance they protected it. Either Stoneclaw or Healing Totem would have kept this fresh. Plus, Wrath of Air Totem was just looking good anyway. It just activates the Spirit Claw at that point. And now it's fully protected. And this is what I meant by that danger. That 2 damage instead of 3 damage starting to come into effect. And I really don't understand the swing of Spirit Claws here. That is weird.
Well, I think it's Cal Poly Pomona knows that they're so ahead on board now that they're just going aggressive.
Wow.
They don't have the cards in hand to be aggressive, but they think they've got the board to, maybe the 1 damage over the few turns will matter.
It just feels like a waste to me. And they know they're rolling a Totem next turn alongside Hex, like super often. When that doesn't happen, they're probably still rolling a Totem and maybe using Lightning Storm in that spot. But here, it's just a 1/1. So that's 3 damage that is potentially lost in the long term there.
Well,
Don't
you
like
have
the
to
play.
consider 3 more weapons in the deck. You want to get that weapon damage over all of those turns, and Cal Poly Pomona's board looking like they can close this out sooner. Man, Bran Aya is going to be really, really good.
Yeah, it will be disrupted by Jade Lightning here, but keep an eye on that Spirit Claws. If they run into a spot where they need 3 damage or even 1 damage down the road, that's going to be something to think about.
Well, because they hit with it 2 turns ago, they feel like this, or last turn, they feel like they have to hit with it again this turn. But yeah, you're playing Aya next turn.
Yeah.
You don't want to give up that Spirit Claws until you have a second weapon in hand. Maybe you're right. It might be a little bit sloppy.
And now card draw in the mix. So almost certainly to be forgiven here by the Manatide Totem. Alberta's about to use the rest of their hand to start answering this board. I mean, maybe they just Jade Chieftain instead, but this is starting to get dangerous.
I don't know. I don't think the Jade Chieftain is necessary here. You got to play it a little bit safe.
Yeah,
and with the Spirit Claws, you can hit into the Aya, Maelstrom, and once again, you leave the Flame Tongue on the board.
Yeah, a little bit less chance to get punished here. I mean, they do have the deckhand. You also
went
now
for the
have a
spell
Stoneclaw on the
damage
way.
roll.
Yeah, this is a good setup for Alberta. So they stabilize a bit from the early, but down to 16. And honestly, Light Warden's pretty good here. It makes a Healing Totem from your opponent buff up the Light Warden. It gets +2 attack anytime anything gets healed. Makes Genu Water Speaker buff it up to 3. That's actually a very significant drop from the Maelstrom portal.
Cal Poly Pomona has to Lightning Storm a Totem, a 1-drop from a Maelstrom, and a Blood Mage Thalnos.
And that's negative value. That's not the position they wanted to use that in.
All right, they do pick up their own Jade Chieftain.
Manatide's checked as well. This is going to be close.
Well, if you check the Manatide, then you can't clear off the Flame Tongue. Unless you were to pick up the spell damage, which they don't. So
they're gonna
is
use
it
the
even
Flame
just
Tongue.
better to Jade Spirit and Totem Golem here?
I don't know. I think you got to take care of the Manatide. That's one of the most significant threats that they can be facing right now. I mean, this is a card advantage battle they've been fighting for the last 8 turns.
Oh yeah, drop down the Deckhand and Flame Tongue. Then you clear off both. Then you can drop the Totem Golem beside them.
Looks good to me. Totem Golem's great.
Yep, this worked out well.
Yeah, Totem Golem's sick. That card's just good.
Why would you build your own Totem Golem when you've just got Totem Golem? It's a good card. No Finges and Shaman necessary.
I wonder how good that would be in mid-range Shaman, actually.
You want to try it?
Probably.
Might be worth it.
That's a nice drop from the hero power there. That allows them to isolate Flame Tongue Totem now. It's a hefty cost, and they actually paid 2 extra life due to the positioning. The sequence of plays they made. It's likely to be fairly inconsequential, though.
Worgen Infiltrator, not bad either. Unless your opponent has a Maelstrom Portal, you're likely to be able to get a trade with that, and that could be significant. Alberta with the more influential minions in hand, but Cal Poly Pomona does have access to both hexes. And there's a Jade Claws to boot.
This is where the game gets really interesting. The resources have gone fairly even on both sides. Jade Chieftain is looking a bit rough. But Alberta's got some gas in him. Those are 2 very strong minions right now.
There's another really strong minion pickup. I like to think you go for
Azure Drake.
Drake's
Take out that
Spirit
3/3,
this
I
turn.
think.
Yeah, makes
Spirit
a lot of
Claw's
sense.
not getting much better than this, honestly. You know, at this point, the Jades are just starting to scale up. You've already seen a Mana Tide. You've seen Flame Tongue go away. Not only do you get a 4/4 and you get to draw a card, but you get to start wiping stuff off the board. And
Put
you
up
got
the
a 5/5.
Jade Spirit next to
or
it, yeah.
4/4 rather, yeah.
2/3 can clear off some totems in the following turns. Yeah, this is looking like a pretty solid board for Alberta, even with the Jade Chieftain into the Golem. That's
These are
really nice.
Great draws for Alberta.
Cal Poly is going to need some strong minion draws to be able to keep up. They have the Hexes and the Jinyu, but those are all reactive cards. They need development now.
Well, they are at 13. So that is something to think about. Do they feel 100% safe? They're facing down 5, 6, 7 damage. So 8, 9, 10, 11 from Jade. It would die to a combination of damage spells, but not a single damage spell alone. Most of the damage spells at this point would be 4.
Well, and now Cal Poly Pomona pointing the trades out. Alberta likely knowing they're safe here.
Yeah, it's a matter of how this is sequenced. It's a tad awkward because they don't want to take the extra damage from the Jade Chieftain because the Flame Tongue's there, but they also want to start cutting the pressure off board. So do they take care of Azure Drake, wipe out the Jade Chieftain, or do they take out the Flame Tongue, leave the Azure Drake alone, take out the Jade Chieftain? I think I like taking out the Azure Drake because they have the Jinyu Water Speaker, but they're concerned with their own health.
Forced to heal here instead of putting down the Mana Tide totem.
Yeah, this trade is very consistent with caring for your own health. 4, 8, 9, 10 plus 9. So this plays around Bloodlust is what their goal was.
I think this is going to do it for Alberta. They pick up the Hex, and their Jades at this point are just bigger and more constant.
Yeah, it's a lot of big stuff. Whoa. That is very surprising to me.
I think I would have liked to see... I don't know, the Chieftain and the Hex just made a lot of sense here.
I think the Jade Claws and the Chieftain made a lot of sense. That just adds a lot of power to board.
The Totem, however,
And you got the trade set up for you.
do much.
You'd have a
It
6/6
worked out
Taunt play to
okay.
hold this off. I mean, you end up in a similar position, not quite as wide of a board state.
Well, Hex the Golem.
Hex
Maelstrom
Mantide,
Portal.
Maelstrom, yeah.
Pretty straightforward for Cal Poly. Yeah, Alberta could have developed a much bigger board here. They could have had a 5/5 and a 6/6 Golem.
Yeah, they would have left themselves vulnerable to Maelstrom Portal pretty much either way they sliced it. But
Yep. I mean, they're behind on health. The only valuable options they have are board control.
Well, that's a great pickup. Honestly, Cal Poly might be ahead after that Mana Tide Totem, and that's not the strongest draw. Mean Street Marshal, of course, operates very well alongside Flame Tongue Totem. Get an extra card draw when you trade it off.
Warriors, come out to play.
All right, Chieftain coming down now.
Second Hex.
This is going to be close. Honestly, I think it might come down to the extra draws from the Mana Tide and the Drake for for Cal Poly. That's just really, really valuable here.
And that's the thing about the matchup is you're constantly fighting a card advantage battle because the resources are so evenly matched, and neither deck is really meant to make gigantic pushes all at once. It's meant to have an overwhelming board state. I will say though, Flame Tongue is awfully strong here, and that's awfully weak.
All right, what are they going to pick up? Blood Mage, not too good.
Yeah.
It does give you the additional draw, but now you're in a bit of a tough spot. You can Hex the 8/6, but the Flame Tongue is still just going to do work.
Yeah, my question is, do they roll a totem here or do they cycle with the Blood Mage? I think I'd like to see them cycle here because
I think they need their second Lightning
yeah,
Storm.
they're in like a power draw mode right now, so they need to find an answer to this board state.
That's certainly a nice pickup. Alberta still has Devolve in deck. Yep, there it is.
Ooh, that is a pretty spicy draw right now.
Oh, baby. That's going to remove the draw from the Blood Mage Thalnos. I think I like trading into the Drake. 4-drop might be stronger than the 4/4.
They're thinking about what 4-cost cards can punish them in this spot. There are some, but there's a lot more 4-cost cards that actually Cal Poly Pomona gets punished by. Like Midnight Drake can come in the fray. It's just simply a 1-4 at that point. Twilight Drake can come off of this. Neither of those cards get their Battle Cry, and they're very weak at that point. And 5-3.
Magnetar Alpha, that does punish Alberta ever so slightly.
Yeah, it's a similar trade-off here, but the big thing is they got rid of card draw. And that means they get to start pushing damage. That 7 is connected.
But that's a really good draw. If Cal Poly can get spell damage, they get it. All right, so that's a clean clear on the Chieftain. Drop down the Jade Spirit, and this game has flipped so many times.
It's the nature of the Shaman matchup. It's back and forth and back and forth, and Cal Poly, the extra draw potential, has pulled them ahead in this game.
I don't think one draw from Alberta is going to be able to do it. Cal Poly,
They can keep themselves alive, but that's not good enough here.
I'm really curious. Do you think that the Jade Chieftain on the same turn as the Jade Claws for Alberta, one turn earlier, that development, you think it could have made a difference?
Yeah, it would have pushed extra damage. It would have led to a better board state for them. They would have had the Hex for later on to force an awkward board state. They took it slow. They fell behind.
No way for Alberta to clear off this board with one draw unless they've teched an Elemental Destruction. And Jade Spirit is not going to do it. Cal Poly Pomona going to take a 2-1 lead in this series over Alberta.
The grindy matchup, they've been getting the better of it. I mean, Manatide Totem certainly was a big breaker in this matchup. They landed 2 of them. But I still think Alberta could have played a little bit more quickly to board. They paced their threats well right up until that point where they're so used to pacing their threats, they continue to do that. Once the Jades reach a certain level, you can start throwing caution to the wind and go, can you deal with these giant things? And the answer is no. There's not really a way to deal with giant things. What could have happened is maybe fearing Devolve. They've teched that into their own list.
Yeah.
And that could have been something they maybe anticipated on the other side. That's really the only thing I can think of in hindsight that they might have been scared of. But in that situation, you still got a 6-cost minion and a 7-cost minion. You'll get some good drops off that still.
I mean, Wrath of Air Totem is great, don't get me wrong. But in this case, they decided to put that on board and decided to forego 11 power worth of stats on the board. And I think it may have come back to bite them just a bit. And Cal Poly Pomona 2-1 in this series. We do have another tweet to bring up on the screen. This one coming to us from @XmasBunnyHS. Favorite moment of this Tespa tournament so far. So many insane plays and moments to choose. Man, you're telling me there have been some crazy, crazy moments.
Yeah, I think one of my favorites is there was a game we were watching last week where Small Time Buccaneers played on turn 1 and Patches came straight out of the cannon. It just went face for 1. That was incredible. I'm kidding. It was a sacrificial pact. That's been the top moment of like.
Oh my God, I just felt my heart drop. Admirable. Man, why you gotta do that?
Sacrificial pact is the moment. 30th card in the deck, naturally there, blows up a Jiraxis. We couldn't figure out why they wouldn't play Jiraxis. Because they just wanted to draw the Sacrificial Pact and win the game automatically.
Life tapping themselves into fatigue. The 30th card is the Sacrificial Pact. I don't know that anything's going to beat that. If the full Finja lineup can't beat that, then it's very likely that nothing ever will.
That is the one that could test it for me.
It's close. It's very close. I don't know if it can quite edge it out. But thank you so much for your tweet. If you want to ask us questions, send in your thoughts about this tournament so far. Tweet @Team Tespa or go on Facebook /Team Tespa. Your tweet gets chosen to be featured on stream. You get the Dalaran Flame card back as well as your question answered. That sounds to me like a pretty sweet deal.
I like free stuff.
Free stuff is pretty good. It's why I go to Costco. Let's take a look at what this series is coming down to. Cal State Polytechnic Pomona with the Priest. University of Alberta, Mage and Shaman. You said it yourself, the Priest can match up really well against the Reno Mage. It has a lot of value.
Yeah, and I think against the mid-range Shaman, it operates fairly well also. And given what University of Alberta did in the last game, Priest, I think, is one of the decks where you really can't afford to pace your threats quite as much. You have to get going. You have to pick up card draw. You have to fight for the board very aggressively. If they decide to pace it when the resources aren't as evenly matched, they could easily fall behind to a timely Shadow Word Death.
Yeah, we could be looking at another 2 pretty reasonably long games here. University of Alberta in their robes, hoping to get to bed soon and finish off this series quickly. But it doesn't look like that will be the case for them. Look at this hand for Cal Poly Pomona. Really strong.
You said it. Acidic Swamp Ooze answer weapons. I got Blackwing Technician, one of the strongest cards that Priest has access to in the 3 slot. Cabal Talon Priest, if either of those lives. They're under a little bit of pressure early on, but they have coin, and coin Blackwing Technician is insane at times. However, Totem Golem is something, isn't it?
Survey says the Totem Golem has the same stats as the Cabal Talon Priest, but the Cabal Talon Priest costs 1 more mana. It's pretty good. It's pretty good for the Totem Golem. And certainly
Added
Cal
benefit.
Poly Pomona would have liked to have a 1-drop. It would have really fleshed out their curve. But the Technician is going to challenge this board pretty well.
This is the big fade that Cal Poly Pomona was hoping for, was no Flame Tongue Totem. Flame Tongue Totem would have eaten their lunch in this situation.
That's just rude.
It would have been nigh impossible for them to win if Flame Tongue showed up here. And here Alberta, respecting how powerful that threat is on board, they take it out now, hope that Totem Golem can get some value later on.
Cal Poly Pomona
Interesting.
needing to give up some of their resources.
Yeah, if they're going to go with the Cabal Talon Priest here, I'm curious if I'd like the Bran more than that. It's going to match up fairly evenly on the board either way, but I think the Cabal Talon Priest offers you some strong snowball potential. I'm going to go with it anyway. They want the value later on.
Even on turn 4, if you can just Twilight Whelp Talon Priest, that's a 2/6 can get some work done against Shaman. Okay, I actually really like this. The Priest is never going to threaten too much damage, and the Totem Golem here is just more valuable for Alberta, so they're going to decide to heal it up and get yet another nice trade.
Yeah, it's not too often that Jinyu Water Speaker ends up being significant in this matchup, but one of the times it is when Cal Poly Pomona doesn't have Doomsayer, and when they've seen no Shadow Word Pain, which almost certainly would have been used on Totem Golem. So Alberta feels safe to play it here, and it's actually pretty big. And they had the read that Cal Poly Pomona does not have Shadow Word Pain. They think that Totem Golem would have bit the dust. It's a +1 for Alberta.
We were saying Cal Poly Pomona had a great start. Totem Golem was just better in this case, and they are still struggling to find their way back onto this board.
Yeah, they're going to hang on to the Twilight Whelp here. It would almost certainly just end up being sacrificed at some point. And they want that to stick around in hand and activate their other dragon cards. They have Dragon Operative, they have Blackwing Corruptor. You know, it looks like they're playing Azure Drake very often next turn. If that's the case, that would be their final dragon in hand. So holding on to that Twilight Whelp is insurance for their future draws.
Yep, Drake coming down.
Ooh,
That's a big draw.
good one.
We're not seeing Dragonfire Potion in every Dragon Priest deck. It's not an auto-include anymore.
Yeah, well, there is 2 Azure Drakes on the other side, too. I mean, Dragonfire Potion largely had rotated out. Just so when this deck gets ahead, it just doesn't need it. But there are certain matchups it struggles with. Mid-range can be really tough if on the Shaman side. It is nice to have a board clear against Pirates, so a lot of the times you just don't have time to fight against what they're doing. And against Rogues, say they stealth an Auctioneer. Now you suddenly have a way to handle it, and that could be the difference between winning and losing at times. And Alberta going to continue to hedge their bets, protect that Azure Drake, one of the most important minions against Priest. Live to fight another day. And now suddenly holding on to that Twilight Whelp has looked absolutely fantastic. Double value with another Spite Historian, and they get their 2/5.
Ooh, Chillmaw looking like a fantastic pickup here.
Very quick picks, though. I think I would like to see them mull over it, just for the sake of doing so.
You might as well take the time. Also, it conceals some information.
Yeah, I mean, if you take it instantly, your opponent knows you got a pretty good dragon, or that you misclicked.
I've done both.
Same.
But in this case, it's just going to be a couple of good dragons.
Yikes, that lightning storm.
Coupled with the Jade Spirit. This is pretty gross from Alberta.
They don't need to play the Blood Mage here. If the roll fails to hit the Twilight Whelp, they simply run their Jade Spirit in. That allows them to play that extra Jade Spirit, keep those Jades rolling, and make them bigger and bigger. Eventually, it gets out of hand. And Azure Drake, again, it's super important here. It sticks around through that Dragonfire Potion if and when it arrives. But Chillmaw, not too shabby on its own.
If Alberta can pick up a Hex, however, that will just shut down this game for them. No dice.
Just love how the Azure Drake is sticking around through any AoE Cal Poly Pomona has.
I mean, it's Priest. What do you really expect. At some point, I'm expecting Shadow Word Azure Drake, except we do know now the Azure Drake will be moving to the Hall of Fame.
It's true.
Will not be killing priests in Standard any longer.
Shadow Word 4.
Shadow Word 4.
The number 4, not the word
Yes.
4 either, yeah. So that way it's not only ironic, but it's also inconsistent. That
Two
would just be
things which the
dream.
priest desperately needs: irony and inconsistency.
Well, Onyxia,
I feel like that was maybe a
It's-
bit of a snap pick.
I think it's definitely the better pick of the ones available, but I just see the Maelstrom portal in Alberta's hand, and I'm like, I just feel bad.
Operative was a great pickup. These, however, are not.
Yeah, these are weak discovers. Honestly, this is some pretty bad news for Cal Poly Pomona. They could pretty much anticipate Alberta didn't have these cards, but when they don't see anything big, they're like, wow, what is their hand?
I mean, there's 2 hexes left in Alberta's deck. One of those right now could have really helped out Cal Poly.
Alberta's hand is the juice.
Pretty darn good. Removal, development, card draw. And they've got
Much more can you ask
board to
for?
boot.
Now they're eyeing the Blood Mage and big swing of spells. Now they're going to consider Lightning Storm, I believe. Maelstrom Portal's for 3, though.
Maelstrom, and you run in the Jinyu to the operative. It's not bad. Lightning Storm is 4 to 5 damage.
Cal Poly Pomona's going to have to believe their Onyxia is enough to get on board. They're falling so far behind, though. I mean, is there any merit to just pushing damage? They have Jade Lightning in hand alongside a Blood Mage. There's a lot of damage. They could push 8 this turn.
Something to consider.
Yeah, this does operate very efficiently, and a 2/4 gets dropped as well. Suddenly, Dragonfire Potion not looking so good.
I mean, they still end up pushing 5, put Cal Poly Pomona down to 12.
They're representing lethal.
You can't Onyxia because you're dead. You can't Dragonfire Potion because it leaves 8 on board,
And you're dead.
and you're dead. You can't Shadow Word Death them because they have 4 attack.
Yeah, Cal Poly Pomona their early game failed. They ran into Totem Golem early on. They had no Shadow Word Pain. They drew no Holy Nova ever to recover the board, and they ran into 2 Azure Drakes. This was about the worst scenario I think they could have gotten in this game. Also, didn't draw Twilight Guardian. Very important card to this deck. Their turn 4 was fairly weak.
Trying to find some way out of this.
Earthquake, Tsunami,
Hurricane.
Meteor. That Azure Drake's just beating them up. This cuts the most damage they can, but just not going to be enough.
Yep, the 2 extra spell damage on the Jade Lightning. Gonna close out this game.
Someone injured?
And it could have been the 3rd. Game 5. So Reno Mage versus Priest, Dragon Priest specifically.
It can go either way.
If Alberta can get another fantastic start, and they can fade the early curve from Cal Poly Pomona, or just simply never run into Draconid Operative, which never happens, they're probably in pretty good shape. But those are going to be the key cards to look out for in this next matchup. Is number 1, it's going to be that early curve. They get a strong enough one, it means Cabal Talon Priest is going to protect a minion for a long time. It's build your own Twilight Drake for all intents and purposes. And then the second one is Draconid Operative. They're finding those off Netherspite Historians. If they're coupling that with Bran, those pickups they get are cards that they should not have access to. And that extra access spells a ton of value. I really feel like Alberta's in trouble here. It's been a fantastic couple of games for them, but this is a rough matchup.
It's a fun one, though. It's a fun one when you see Priest attempting to play all different classes and get some big dragons that we rarely see. All coming down to the Dragon Priest versus the Mage. I don't know. I mean, the Mage, if it's Reno, Kazakus can do big things. They do have some nice early removal. They have some decent minions for development.
It boils down a lot to having the right cards at the right time. But, you think about some of their more powerful early game cards, like Water Elemental. Shadow Word Pain just kills that straight away. And that's the kind of situation that Cal Poly Pomona is looking for, is to just have their tools line up so well against this deck. This is one of the reasons why Dragon Priest gets played, is because Reno Mage is such a popular deck, and they've teched in Ragnaros as well. They are definitely targeting Reno Mage with this.
Makes a lot of sense. Reno Mage has been one of the most popular picks over the last several weeks. We're seeing it
Now-
again.
Yeah, I do like the mulligan of the Northshire Cleric here, too. This is often a mistake I see Dragon Priest players make when they're in this matchup. It's not about having simply drops. It's about having the right drops. And later on in the game, when your opponent's trying to freeze your board down with Blizzard, when they're using Volcanic Potion to wipe out low health minions and try to damage the rest of the setup, Northshire Cleric Holy Nova can draw you 3 or 4 cards, protect your board, and completely dominate in situations like that. Heads up on Cal Poly Pomona to mulligan away that Northshire Cleric.
Alberta choosing to keep the Dirty Rat. The Babbling Book makes sense. You want something on one. The Dirty Rat.
Fist pump? Cal Poly Pomona just fist pumped, and rightfully so. Their hand's insane.
Yeah, they're rolling into Draconid Operative exactly when they need it. Very likely to pick up another dragon moving forward.
I could see it. He's like, God, there's no way they win. There's no way. Look at our hand. And they draw the Northshire.
Man.
This is the other benefit, too. When you have these early starts, the Northshire Cleric looks so good.
Yeah, and the Shatter certainly doesn't help Alberta at all. Okay, Reno's going to make this game a little bit longer.
It's not a critical card in this matchup, though. Oftentimes when you're under threat from Dragon Priest, in Alberta's case, it's just simply the amount of board stuff they have. The post-Reno damage dealt by Cal Poly Pomona tends to be a lot because the only way they pressure is board presence. If you're getting pressured, it means that there's a lot of damage on board, and Reno, it buys you another turn sometimes. That's it.
Famous PRD. Dragon Priest is fantastic at killing after Reno because they are grabbing hold of this board early on and they are not letting go.
And this Dirty Rat could be a major liability. I'd honestly be kind of surprised if they're genuinely considering playing it rather than just taking their time. Like, you do need to think of the option of it, but you know, any big dragon's going to punish you. Northshire Cleric's going to punish you. Just a 3/4 is going to punish you. You know, say they pull Bran out of hand, and Cal Poly Pomona has Cabal Talon Priest. That's going to punish you. There's just free development here for Cal Poly Pomona.
Well, they don't have a super easy way to clear it off. They pick up the Bran. You have to imagine there's going to be a heal here.
Oh, yeah.
Any chance they can pick up an extra card and continue to outvalue Alberta is going to be fantastic for Cal Poly Pomona.
This is bad news for Alberta. Where they got a Forbidden Flame this Northshire Cleric. Like, this is nuts. That's one of their premier removal spells in this matchup because it can flex all the way up to 10.
Yeah.
Here, they have to shut off that card drawing engine, and the heal every single turn. This is when it's valuable. It's when these strange value fights for the board. It just keeps going and it keeps going.
Oh, they're going to get rid of the coin and they're going to throw it at the Wormrest agent. It lets him clear off the Twilight Wealth, which essentially denies a draw, but now Cal Poly can run in the Cleric and heal anyway.
Yeah, the one thing to think about here is how many cards is too many cards to draw. That's it. So if the long-term plan for Alberta, if they feel comfortable denying Cal Poly Pomona enough damage to kill them with the resources they have, fatigue can be an issue, but so far they've drawn a dead card off the Babbling Book. Ice Block's already in hand. Reno Jackson, Alex Strauss are not strong tools at the moment, and they pick up Mistress of Mixtures. This is just starting to roll downhill.
Yeah, I don't foresee fatigue being too much of an issue. Cal Poly Pomona picks up a dragon exactly when they needed one, and Operative slammed right on turn 5. They're not the best pickups,
Good
but
information to get, though. They know
Yeah.
that Mind Control deck's there now. And I'll tell you, Frostbolt's not a lot, but typically Alberta's going to expect 0 burst potential from Cal Poly Pomona. Now it's 3.
anything that gives them a little more flexibility, it's not a bad thing. And like you said, now they know that they can extend onto board more without running the risk of running into Mind Control tech.
Yeah, the extra draws make that a little bit painful, but Alberta does need to try to set up for coming Firelands Portal, coming Flame
They still
Strike.
have to wait 2 turns.
It's going to take a while, but
What to do? What to do?
And this is just looking really, really rough for Alberta here. Cal Poly Pomona,
oh my.
Bran Cabal Talon Priest,
Whoa.
or they can Cabal Talon Priest and choose to heal.
Yeah, so they'd rather just keep drawing extra cards at this point. Their next best pickup is likely just a second Draconid Operative.
Grand Nether Spite Historian's pretty sweet.
It's good too. And the damage is starting to pile on now. This is where the repetitive damage starts to become a bit much. Mind Control Tech gets drawn.
Brand Mind Control Tech won't do it. There's not 5 minions on Cal Poly's board.
Is there any chance they can just wait? Like, if Cal Poly Pomona plays 1 extra minion, they get a Brand and a double steal. You know, is that worth it? I think it's too likely for Cal Poly Pomona's next cards to be, you know, just fairly weak. Like maybe another Northshire, Nether Spite Historian. You know,
And they want to
maybe
roll
like a
into
3/5.
removal on 7. I think is the big thing here.
Yeah, that's another big one too. They need to hit that Flame Strike or the Firelands Portal.
Well, Frostbolt's not bad here. Allows Cal Poly to clear off some of these minions without sacrificing their board.
I'm really surprised that they want to attack the board position here. They're just simply trying to protect that Draconid Operative as long as possible. I really don't mind that.
Just being as protective of their board as possible.
got-
They're drawing a lot, though.
They got Ragnaros. They got another Technician. That's still a lot of damage sitting on the board. Alberta's still in trouble.
That's going to mitigate some of it.
That's if they choose to cast it. They really have to consider Ragnaros from the deck. I mean, how do they stop Ragnaros if they use this Polymorph? You'd be a freeze with Shatter. Yeah, I like the Flame Strike. I think it's as strong as they're going to get.
And it's still very weak.
And that's 6 more damage they have with the Brand here. Alberta, they're all but out of this game at this point.
It's a 16 from Cal Poly. They cannot pop the block this turn, but almost certainly on the following turn. Alberta has Reno in response. No way to clear off this board, though.
Well, they might just Polymorph and let the block get popped.
Yeah,
I think it's
and then
reasonable.
Reno after.
Yeah. Ooh.
That's not bad.
Can they stop their block by getting blocked? Are they Mistress? And no, I'd only take them to 6.
Nope, not quite good enough. The Blackwing Corruptor in Cal Poly Pomona's hand would prevent that. There's just so much value in Cal Poly's hand, though. You still have access to Brand Nether Spite Historian. You are not running out of threats ever. Your opponent, however, is running out of removal.
Yeah, it's very similar to the Reno Mage versus Handlock matchup. The difference is the way that Cal Poly Pomona draws cards is by having board presence. So it's a little bit more situational. I mean, they do have to draw Northshire Cleric, but the threat count is just enormous. That's what's making it so tough. Oh my gosh.
Well,
That's gonna wait around till turn 10, I imagine. That's gonna be Bran plus the Nether Spite plus the Draconid Operative. They're free to just dump stuff onto the board here. It also helps in fight against Reno Jackson's comes down. They've just seen Flame Strike.
he's going to put another 4 cards into Cal Poly Pomona's hand. 2 Dragons of Choice, which can be huge, huge influencers, and then 2 cards from Alberta's deck, which is still chock full of great, great items.
Yeah, so they're going to go up to 8 cards. They'll go down to 7 with Brand, 6 with Nether Spite, 5 with the Draconid Operative. They'll pick up 4 cards from that and go to 9 cards in hand.
Then they get the draw for 10.
Yep, perfect.
Lining up so well.
He thinks they're going to be rich, but not as
And
rich
you're
as Cal
blowing
Poly
it all
Pomona.
on bad investments here, Reno Jackson. Somebody invested in cattle.
Yeah, Reno, I bet you pay transaction fees on your mutual funds.
Bet you get like a interest rate. You know?
I bet he can't
it's
even
really
spell
bad.
Dow Jones.
I bet he doesn't even know what a Roth IRA is.
Oh my god. Kazak is not really an option here, but Forgotten Torch, certainly some burn they want in the deck. This is after Reno Jackson, gives them an extra card in case fatigue starts rolling around. If they pick Kazakas, they can get it active, but not for quite a long time. I mean, how closely are they tracking the cards in their deck?
Well, now you can take it if you want it.
I think it's better than Blizzard.
Certainly not dying anytime soon.
And now they would have the insurance of the super late game Kazakas once they know that their deck no longer contains duplicates. Doesn't matter if we start with duplicates, you just can't have any left when you
Yes.
play it. Or left in the deck, that is. There you go.
That's where you want to point that.
Yeah, don't double trade him, Reno. That guy's doing nothing right now. There you go.
What are we going to get? That is a Malagos
Yep. Take that one.
and a Ysera
Yep.
or a Draconid Operative.
Yep, take that one.
2 snap picks, but certainly the right choices here. I think Ysera was an option, but You have so much that your opponent has to kill. There's a likelihood that Brand gets to live, and then Dragon Operative gives you 2 more cards.
Right. I mean, say Alberta kills the Brand here. Well, they're leaving 16 damage on board in that case, so it's probably attack the Blackwing Corruptor and probably Fireball a Draconid Operative, and those cards have been replacing themselves. This is a compounding issue. How much damage are they facing? 15, 16, 17, 18. So they died a Holy Nova as well, so I think the merit of Alexstrasza face and go for it is lost here also.
Yeah, I'm thinking Reno into the Corruptor. You can Firelands Portal the damaged Operative.
I don't know. I think Alexstrasza may be one of their best bets to win here. Just try to get an offensive start going.
Yeah, might be a good point. Not
They're just
every
facing
priest
so
has Holy
much
Nova.
damage. Plus your opponent just got 2 steals. Yeah, there's no way. You died a Blackwing Corruptor and a Holy Nova and any burn your opponent picked up.
And you would need 2 turns worth
Ooh,
of burn.
look at that, a Burgly Bully. That's interesting. That's actually going to pull some heat.
Be really good if Alberta still had Reno available, but their only heal here is going to be Alexstrasza. Back up to 15 when they get below it. And the Bully's a bit of a nuisance for Cal Poly to remove.
I think I like the Malagos here.
That's up for an 8 power Forgotten
Yeah,
Torch.
I think it's just 12 health.
You've seen Polymorph.
How's Alberta killing that?
You've seen Babbling Book, so you can't Babbling Book a Polymorph. No Poveling Books today.
It's really hard to deny brand value, though. Blood Mage, interesting.
Kabbalist Tome.
Oh, my.
Wow. So, how does Cal Poly lose?
That's a...
I think that's the more difficult puzzle here.
Meteor, earthquake.
Hurricane, mudslide. There's been a lot of water lately in California.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I think they have found their way into a win. Dragon Priest versus Reno Mage.
They still have 9 cards.
It's just a really fun matchup. Dragon Priest does so many
Well,
stupid things.
It's definitely fun for the Dragon Priest.
Not so much for the Mage.
It's the same amount of fun. It's just that Cal Poly Pomona is taking the fun from Alberta and giving it to them in this particular matchup.
Equal amounts of fun, not an equal division of fun. That's where the real divide is.
Yeah, Reno. That's how math works.
You're gonna be rich. Psh.
Trying their best to fend this off, but it is Brand still on board. Repetitive damage still coming. No end of resources in sight for Cal Poly Pomona.
9 on board for Cal Poly, and that is an additional 6 with the 4 from the Forgotten Torch. That's going to close this game out.
Yes, it is. A lot of damage. Still a million cards in hand. Cal Poly Pomona, 3 games to 2 over Alberta with an incredible Game 5 matchup.
We said the Priest didn't have burn from hand. When they get Forgotten Torch, Blood Mage Thalnos, and Brand plus Blackwing Corruptor, they can do a fair amount of damage.
You could piece together Reach just situational. I mean, look at how long Brand lived in that game. And this is after they had forced so many resources from Alberta. Polymorph was gone. They had to Flame Strike a board to get set up. They had to Reno Jackson defensively into a bad board state. Reno Mage struggles in this matchup. Just the tools do not line up well versus a health-efficient minions. It's like everything's a mini Twilight Drake that you're fighting against.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the reason that we've been seeing more and more Tempo Mage instead of Reno Mage. People are figuring out the weaknesses of the Reno Mage and trying to exploit them. We are seeing entirely Reno Mage targeted lineups because it was so common for so long. But Cal Poly Pomona, 3 games to 2 over University of Alberta. And we do have an interview with our winners. It is Cal Poly Pomona taking the second match of the day. Can you guys hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, well, congratulations. Really fantastic job getting your win over Alberta. Tell us a little bit about how you formed your team.
We have a Cal Poly Pomona Esports Facebook group, and one of the main members posted a thing saying, if you like Hearthstone, put all your information here, and then he split us up into teams.
All right, that seems like a really fair way to divide your entire university into Tespa teams, certainly giving you a better chance of representing your school all the way throughout this tournament. Tell us a little bit about this esports group that you guys have. Do you meet up and play together?
The three of us do not. We do not go to the events, but they have I think they have a club on Thursdays, and they have they're part of Tespa. But what else? No, that's about it. Yeah, we're not a part of the Tespa group. We're just a part of like the Hearthstone tournament. But they have a Tespa group at Cal Poly Pomona. It meets on Thursdays, and you can join the Facebook page and then go through them.
Cool. I want to talk to you a little bit about your lineup. Dragon Priest oftentimes finds its way into lineups that are trying to target Reno Mage. In a self-ban format, that's sometimes difficult to do. Talk to me about how you built this lineup and why you chose to omit your own warrior over any of the other decks.
So we looked at their lineup last week, and we figured because they ran the same lineup, I think 2 weeks in a row, they'd run a similar lineup. We initially wanted to go really heavy, so we built 3 decks that were all like heavier, could beat other control decks, because we noticed they played all control decks. They had one aggro deck, it was aggro shaman, but we wanted to just target the control decks. So we knew that Dragon Priest has, a decent matchup against aggro shaman, but they played Jade, which is a mistake, but whatever, it happens. And then we knew the Dragon Priest destroys Reno Mage. And then we brought Jade Shaman because Jade Shaman's probably just the best deck, period, I think, or close to it. And then we brought Reno Mage because that deck is just insane. We always play it. We love it. I don't think we've lost on Reno Mage, besides today. And then, the last deck was Warrior. We banned Warrior because we weren't going to play Warrior. We wanted them to play their control Warrior, thinking that we were going to play Pirate Warrior. But
okay.
Yeah, we don't like Warrior that much. We wanted to see what was going to happen.
Well, certainly taking your strongest decks and playing them well worked out for you guys. Is there anything else you want to say?
No. It was good games. It was a great game. Definitely love being here, love playing Hearthstone, and we hope we can keep winning.
Well, fantastic job. You guys have a 4-0 record now, so best of luck to you, and hopefully we will see you later on in this tournament.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Cal State Poly with a 3-2 victory over Alberta. And I mean, you heard it there. They didn't want to play the Warrior. They banned it out, played their strongest decks. Certainly worked out well for them.
Yeah, I mean, if you think your opponents bring control warrior because you scouted them in the previous weeks, that's an important facet in this particular tournament. Every single week, the teams can submit a new lineup if they want to. So if they find themselves falling into a pattern and they get scouted, likely get taken advantage of by a team who's got that information.
Yeah, and that's when you can really take advantage of your self-ban and craft your lineup against exactly what you know your opponent is bringing. And it certainly worked out very well this time. That Dragon Priest, man, it does so much work against Reno Mage. That's really sweet.
And every card creates a card. It's really tough to beat that.
Yes, it absolutely is. And we have another tweet to feature on stream. This one coming to us from @ODiffused. With the recent announcement of more Wild support, would you like to see a major tournament use the Wild format? I absolutely would. I think there is a lot of undiscovered potential with Wild. I think there is, especially now that we're moving a lot of staple cards to the Hall of Fame, which will then make them Wild. And with the rotations coming up soon enough, I think there's so much potential.
Yeah, I think something that's really interesting to think about is when Wild was first formed, cards were rotating into Wild that we had just recently played with. A lot of times people they remember playing with them. They're like, I've had my fun with these cards. I want to check out the new stuff. It takes a while for older formats to really get going, continue to grow, and then develop their own metagame. I think that now it's been almost a year since we've seen the rotation happen. And cards are being introduced, and we're about to see another rotation take place coming up soon when the next set releases. I think that's going to really start setting Wild apart. The card pool will continue to grow, and they're cards you haven't used in quite a long time. And that's when those older formats start to really take place. So once that next rotation happens, that's when I'm really looking forward to Wild.
Yeah, a lot of those cards that we'd played so much are nostalgic now. They're not played out. You can go back into Wild and play Patron Warrior, and it's not frustrating. It's just fun now. It's nice
still
to...
have charges, though.
Yes, not charges, unfortunately, but still a great deck. Well, if you have a tweet that you want to send to us, ask us questions, let us know what you think about the tournament so far. Tweet @Team Tespa or go on Facebook /Team Tespa. You get your tweet featured on stream, you get your question answered, and you get the Dalaran Flame card back.
Boom, just like that.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and take a look at our final match of the day. Texas, of course, 3-2 over Georgia. Now we just saw Cal Poly Pomona 3-2 over Alberta. Final match is going to be CSU Fullerton versus UC Riverside. It's been a couple of close matches so far. We have our final match for the day coming up next. Don't go anywhere.